Okay, I guess we're doing this. My name is Christy Alfaro. This is my podcast, Christy's Whelmed. It's a podcast. I have been thinking about making a podcast for a while now. I run my blog, Christy is Whelmed, with the hopes of inspiring and supporting people to find happiness in their life through the honest accounts of my crazy, messy, perfectly imperfect life. I made the decision to try and make myself as vulnerable as possible so that through my vulnerability, someone else could find some sort of peace. I think I spent too many years feeling like I was crazy or I was alone in the messiness of my life, that I realized that I'm not alone. People just don't talk about this stuff. So here I am talking about this stuff. This first podcast was incredibly anxiety-inducing for me to put out to the world. I recorded this podcast in the end of January of 2021. It is now the beginning of May 2021, and I finally feel like I'm ready to put it out to the world. This podcast is inspired by one of my blog posts, one of my more popular blog posts, where I talk about ghosts coming back into my life. In the blog, I talk about someone from my high school who had contacted me over New Year's and the emotions that it brought out in me when he contacted me. For the podcast, I decided to bring on a ghost to talk about their perspective. I realized that my blog could be kind of one-dimensional, especially on blog posts like that where, I'm giving my opinion on something that isn't just a me situation. So I decided to create this podcast with the hopes of talking more about what I write in my blog, but also to bring people on and to have conversations and to get different perspectives. And to do that with the ghost blog post, I thought it was best to bring a ghost back into my life. My college ex, my first love, my first everything, Ryan, was so gracious to join the podcast and to come on. It's definitely not something that I think a lot of people or a lot of ghosts would do, and he made himself very open and honest and raw in it, and I really appreciated that. For the sake of keeping him anonymous, I am not saying his last name or tagging him or anything, and if you watch the video component of this, I cover his face in it, out of respect for him and, privacy reasons. But I do want to say before you start listening and watching that I spent so much time sitting on this podcast because listening to it over and over and editing it, there were still wounds that weren't able to be fully healed through this podcast. It was the first time we had talked to each other face to face in almost 7 years. There were a lot of things that were said during our session together that were very healing, but there was only, 45 minutes of time that we talked with each other that I felt like there was a lot that I left unsaid. There were a lot of things that I wished I would have brought up. There were a lot of comments that I would have made or questions I would have had to some of the things he said, that looking back and editing, I just was berating myself. Like, I was like, oh, Christy, why didn't you say anything to that? Or this would have been a good way to say this and things like that. So I felt like I had to make peace with that was our closure. Ryan and I have no ill will to each other. I feel like I should also say that going into this. This isn't going to be some scathing, we rip on each other kind of podcast. It really is just two people who have different point of views on things, having conversation. So in saying all that, please have an open mind when you listen. I hope you enjoy what you hear, what you see. It is very scary for me to let go of this. I've been sitting on this for months. This was something that I desperately needed, but I'm just so scared to publish to the world because I think the minute that it is published, it feels almost like closing a chapter for me. but it's also a beautiful opening. It's the opening of my podcast, and I think that that was what was so beautiful about starting with this episode. I got to lay to rest a relationship that I think I was holding on to for a very long time. And in doing so, I'm opening myself up to the world and hopefully new friends and listeners. And I think it'll be the beginning, hopefully, of a very beautiful journey. So in saying that, this is the podcast. Christy is Whelmed. It's a podcast. Episode 1, Ghosts Coming Back into Your Life. Enjoy.
Thank you, Ryan.
You're welcome. How are you?
I'm good. It is early for me. I mean, it's 9 a.m., but I am not a morning person, so I am kicking. I had some coffee this morning. It's great.
I am a morning person, so I feel in my comfort zone. So hopefully, this will balance everything out.
Exactly. I'm the one that has the questions. I'm a little tired. I might be a little slow, but you're on your A game, so it'll be good.
Yeah.
This podcast is like all about honesty. And so there will be no hard feelings, no hurt feelings. Like there's nothing that I think will be like, too not off topic, but like I don't want my listeners or even you to fear that like hurt feelings are going to come out of this or you shouldn't have said something. Like, that's not what the point of this is.
Yeah, absolutely. And you and I are pretty transparent people in general. So the world is not really that way these days. People always seem to have a filter on, which is for better and for worse in some ways. You need to have a filter in some areas of life. But at the end of the day, this is a really good thing for other people because not very many people are willing to show these kind of layers. So this will benefit other people so much. I think that value your niche, your topic,
Yeah,
So.
I hope so. I mean, like the whole point is, we are coming at it from two different sides. And I feel like very rarely you can get two different sides to sit down and talk, hopefully peacefully. I'm putting that peaceful energy out there, so we'll see. So Ryan, I met Ryan when I was 18. Ryan was my first in like a lot of ways. I met him my freshman year of college on Tinder. We talked for like a couple months before we ever actually met each other. But he was, my first sexual experience. He was, I think, my first what I would classify romantic interest. He was my first quote unquote relationship. He was the first guy that taught me that I can even have feelings for someone romantically, like to that degree. He was the first guy that I thought I was in love with. So he was like a whole package of firsts, which I thought is kind of why we should have him on. But yeah, he and I also had like a very deep friendship, I would say. We, stayed friends even after the romantic portion of our relationship ended. And I think that's kind of what carried us through until, obviously, for reasons we'll get into later, we had to kind of go our separate ways. I think that is, we have to address the reason why we parted ways so that we could come into the part of like how we came back into each other's lives. Like I said, Ryan was a very big, like emotional piece in my life, especially from like the ages of like 18, even to 20, even though like we didn't really know each other when we were 20, but I'm still holding a lot of that like emotional energy with us into my 20s. Yeah. But I think we stopped being friends around like when I was 19. And that was just because you were in a relationship and you felt like you needed to respect that relationship and take a step away from us, which like you did a very respectful phone call with, and it was all explained. It wasn't like you just dropped off the face of the planet on me, which I really appreciated at the time.
Yeah, there was a little bit of closure. And, I had actually just moved from a different side of the country, basically. And I matched with you on Tinder, like literally the second week I might have been in California. So yeah. So for me, at that point in my life, like, we were at a little bit different points because you were in college and I had just graduated college a little bit prior. And I had just moved and we did live an hour away. So we had more of like we had a relationship, but also with a little bit of a feeling of a friendship as well at the same time. It was one of those things where I was just going through a completely different point in my life because I was just moving to a whole brand new state and I just wasn't, I was unsure about where I was in my life. And in fact, at that point, I wasn't even fully into my career yet. I was trying to figure out who I was at a professional standpoint as well. So there was a lot of that going on as well. So, everything does happen for a reason. And I think that kind of explains why things drifted apart at the time. There was also, like I said, a little bit of a distance too. It was a little bit over an hour drive anyhow.
Yeah. Yeah, that was rough. I mean, especially because I didn't have a car. So there was no way for me to even get to you. You were the one doing all the commuting. And you're right, like we were in completely different parts of our life. I mean, even I don't recognize the person I was when I was 18. So like that I think says a lot. So you were 26 when we met, 25?
No, I was 25. I think I just turned 25 a little bit ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm not even 25 yet, but I could imagine like meeting someone who's 18 and like there's a total difference of just place in your life. So yeah, I mean, that makes sense. And you were always very transparent with me about what the expectations were like with us. It was never like I wouldn't say like leading me on, but it was, I think from the get-go, you were pretty much just like, I'm not looking for a relationship. Like I'm not like, this is just fun. I think everything else came on my end in terms of like the feelings and wanting more, but you were never like,
I mean, yeah, I was trying to be honest. And I think that's what's key to not feeling like you're ghosting for the worst. You know how some people ghost and they never talk again and they have a lot of built up resentment. It's because there was poor communication before, in the very beginning stages, or if, a man is at that point, we're about about 6 years apart. And, as a guy in his mid-20s at the time, like there's a lot of guys out there that would, use that age and experience and try to manipulate their way to do things that they may, where someone at 18 might not be able to see everything in the same light. So I definitely didn't want to do that. I cared about you. And like, I think that's why we were able to keep a friendship, is because there was honesty and transparency, the whole time.
Yeah, I definitely think that like carried it through. There definitely was some resentment on my end after things ended, but I feel like it was less to do with like your lack of honesty and more to do with like the feelings I developed and the I would say like the weight that I'd put on us that like I think in a lot of ways was fabricated on my mind, but we'll get to that later.
I mean, yeah. I will say this real quick. Like there was at the time, there was an age gap, but like I just knew in my head, like that it was, even if I was interested in you, I needed to like allow you to like, grow up and everything. Like at that time, I just felt like the age gap, we're in different points of our life, and it would have just been a lot. And I just, at that point, even though I was younger still at that time, I was old enough to realize that it's probably best to be safe in these situations and allow you to kind of like find yourself through college as well, even if I did have feelings towards you. So I just kind of wanted to, bottle that up and kind of allow just, me to kind of get used to the new state I was in. I was very grateful to move out to California. So the cool thing about this call is like, we didn't even plan, like we obviously planned to meet, but like we didn't rehearse anything. This is all like right out there. And like, I can already tell from the very beginning of you starting this podcast, how much you've grown just in the way you're presenting yourself right now.
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, you used to see me when I would take shots and get blackout drunk. So yes, I mean, I remember exactly where I was when you called me. And I remember getting the call and being like, this is weird. Ryan never calls me. Like, this is okay, interesting. I was helping a friend. She had to go to the police station, and you called me, and I was like, standing outside the police station. I don't remember a lot about the call. I just remember you saying that, like, you needed to focus on your current relationship, and, like, our friendship was causing some strain on that. And, like, we would be friends again. And that, like, for the time being, you need to put your focus on that. And it was all very nice and respectful. And I was, like, obviously very sad and very hurt because you were at that point, like, one of my best friends. You knew me the most, I would say, of, like, you were the consistent person in my life at that point. So of course I was very sad, but I also really understood that decision. As now, as someone who's been in, like, a long-term committed relationship, I can say that, like, from a girlfriend's perspective, like, that I really commend you for doing that, because that's, like, huge and super respectful on your relationship, that I don't think or know everyone would do.
Yeah, no, a lot of people wouldn't. I've realized that, not everyone is that honest, especially you realize that as you go through more experiences. But at the time, like, the person I was dating was a little bit insecure. And I also made that phone call partly to appease that other person. Like, I figured that it's sometimes good to be transparent, but also I didn't have to make that call. But I kind of did it for two reasons. I'm being completely honest right now. Like, it was partly because she was hurt in her past and she wanted to feel secure. And it's not like a knock on her or anything. So it was a little bit of both.
But then we didn't talk for at least a couple years after that. I think you didn't reach back out to me until I 21, 22. Like, it was a couple years after that we, like, finally reconnected. And I remember where I was actually then too. I was getting my nails done. It was, like, a little bit after or before my birthday. I was getting my nails done for my birthday. I remember that. It was before my birthday. And I, like, got my Instagram DM and I, like, saw your handle on there, and I was like, that's weird. And I definitely still knew your handle because I definitely still was into stalking your profile. But before you get a big head, I am to stalk everyone's profiles. But yeah, I mean, like, I was very surprised when I saw it. And I think you were just kind of like, you said something along the lines of, like, you were going through your phone and saw old photos from that time. And you, like, just wanted to reach out and say that, like, you're happy that I looked, like, happy or something along those lines.
Yeah, it was a subconscious thing too. Like, I knew that I kind of abruptly called you and kind of like I remember I think we were Snapchat friends, and I just kind of removed, I think, you from social media just for that, when I had made that phone call. And I don't know, like, over the couple years of time, like, I look back at that and I kind of felt like, not that I did anything that was hurtful, but I felt like it was kind of abrupt, and I felt like I wanted you. I just felt like I owed you something. I don't know. And then, but at that time, like, that was a period of time that I was on. We had a break at one point, like, where we kind of went our separate ways, my ex and I. So that was during that time period, and I was like, and for me, subconsciously and partly just mentally, like, I wanted to reach out because it made me feel good at the time also. So it was for me, as well as because I did wish you well too. So it was a lot of different reasons, and I was single at that time, and then we ended up ultimately getting back together. But now that's in the distant past. Everything that's all over from over a year ago now.
And it's really interesting because I feel like you said something about, like, you wanted to, because you felt like you owed me something, but you didn't. Did you have a goal in mind in terms of, like, how I would respond or how the interaction would go? Like, did you have that planned out, or is it more just like, let's send this message out and see what happens?
I would say it's more the latter. It was more just kind of reaching out, and I just feeling like I've always been the type of person that feels like, at least in my past, it's been a lot different the last couple of years. But in my past, I always felt like if I did something, if I did something abruptly that where things kind of changed course, I felt like a sort of, not that there was like I needed closure or anything. It's not like we needed closure, but I just felt like I felt bad. Like I kind of just cut you off, and like not in like a ill will way, nothing bad about it. It was just what I thought was the right thing to do. And I just felt kind of like a little bit guilty, I guess. And, it wasn't like I was being a bad person, but I just had a lot of sympathy for people that meant something to me. So I reached out. I felt like there was nothing to lose. It was a free roll. If you didn't feel like talking to me, you knew that I never tried to hurt you, because I know that when we look back at it and we had those conversations um, way back, like you never ever said anything negative about me or towards me. So I knew that there was never going to be hate. And if you had ignored me, it was more so because you were at a point in your life where you felt like it wasn't right to respond for whatever reason. I wasn't
Yeah.
sure. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that I see where you were coming from with that. It's interesting. You feel like I never said anything negative. I definitely
To me.
would say that I definitely never said anything negative to you. I feel like, because we've reached back out to each other or whatever, we've reconnected twice. That first time, I will say that like I was still in a more state of anger towards you. I had just started therapy, and I was really working through a lot of abandonment issues that I never realized that I had. Like this therapist, honestly, therapy is a godsend. Everyone should go to therapy. But this therapist like totally changed my life. And I realized that a lot of the issues or a lot of the feelings I had, because I was really struggling in the relationship that I was in, not because of him, but because of myself. Like I was driving myself crazy with jealousy and fights and all these things that had nothing to do with him or what he was doing. And I realized a big part of that was issues that I had lying underneath. And one of them is like I had major abandonment issues, and I was working through that around the time you reached out the first time. And I did really feel abandoned by you. And I know, and I said it like you were very clear about everything. Like you were very honest, and I do respect the decision you made and why you made it. But for me in that moment, it was really hard, especially because I felt like we had this like on off thing for a while, in terms of like, I knew that you were seeing someone when we were like together. And I always kind of said that we were like an open relationship. I think that's how I would describe us. Like we were both seeing other people, but we still really cared about each other. And I remember there were just always like these little moments where I would get in my head about you seeing someone, and it would just like, I would spiral, and I would say like, I'm done with Ryan. I'm not going to see him anymore. Like I'm going to finally move on. And I never did. I like kept coming back to you. And so when you broke it off, like officially, I was really hurt and I felt really abandoned. But I also realized that like, not only was it the right decision for you, but it was completely the right decision for me. And I like was totally attaching and using you as a crutch. And when we like broke that off, I was able to like address us and address like my own internal demons. But you reached out to me at the time that I was doing all that. Like I was in like the crux of like figuring everything out. And I definitely saw you as like this just like not evil person. I never thought you were evil, but like I definitely saw you in a much more negative light at the time. And like I did obviously like I responded to you because we didn't end badly. I did really appreciate your message. Your message was really nice. And I had worked through it enough to know that like you weren't doing anything maliciously, but I definitely didn't receive the message well. I mean, like I I obsessed over it for like weeks. It was like the week before my birthday. I remember I was like with my partner and like I could not stop thinking about it. So that was really hard for me. And we did end up like not talking for like a year or two after that, which also threw me for like a tailspin. And obviously it's because you got back in your relationship. But I think those feelings of abandonment had kind of like popped themselves back up after that moment.
Yeah, no, I mean, now that we're discussing it, it kind of makes a little bit more sense, both perspectives. And to be honest, like I didn't know the complexity of what you were going through you talking about this right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we ever really got that deep, but yeah, I mean, you didn't, and I didn't, and it wasn't exactly something I was sharing in my past. It wasn't even something I knew I really had in me. Like that was found in therapy, and I remember like there was this moment when my therapist said something, and I was like, oh, wow, that explains so much. And I still have those moments even today. Like sometimes someone will say something to me, or like one of my friends just introduced me to the idea of attachment styles, and it just like things click. And I only figured that out by learning, and I hadn't learned any of that beforehand. I like didn't know why I kept clinging to you and our potential. I mean, I was in this new relationship, and I remember still mentally thinking, I was like, Ryan and I are going to get back together one day. Like Ryan is my person that like we just keep coming back to each other, and it'll just work itself out because you were the only person I felt like I'd ever connected with. And I dated other people in between, but like for some reason my mind kept coming back to you. And it definitely was my like abandonment issues. It was more of, no, it was less of like wanting you in that relationship and more of like, I hate people abandoning me. And I wanted just like to know that like, I'm not someone that can be abandoned. And that's why I kept pulling and gravitating towards you. But that's how I felt at that moment.
Yeah. I mean, it could be that could be the largest factor. And this isn't for everyone, but it could also be like, you had a lot of your first experiences as well. Like I look back at some of my childhood friends even, and we're completely different people. Like my best friend in high school, who I used to joke around about, and we were mostly serious, but I was like, if and when I get married, you're going to be my best man. And like, we used to like joke around, but like, we were mostly serious, like when we were in our teenage years and I was graduating high school, and now he's like 32, 33, and I'm like 30, 31. Well, I'm 31 now. And we still like even though I talk to him like 2 or 3 times a year, it's like we picked back left off where we were, but we're completely different. He doesn't even hit the gym. Like he has a totally different lifestyle, but we respect and we appreciate the past so much that we hold on to that. And there's always going to be love for him no matter what, even if we have completely different lifestyles. And he'll still be invited to my wedding. He might not be my best man, but he'll definitely be there. And even though we're completely different people, we just hold on to so many good memories. So that could be part of it too.
I mean, I definitely think that does play a factor for a lot of people. I definitely, when I went through therapy, definitely did like not a cleanse of sorts, but I've kind of learned that people serve their purpose in my life for a reason. But we will talk about that later. So we did talk for like a year and a half. And then you reached back out to me a second time during quarantine. It was during quarantine. We refollowed each other, and I think we kind of would just like each other's stuff randomly. Nothing like actually communicating. And then you messaged me one day, and I honestly don't remember what the message was, but I think it was just like hey, things are looking good. Like you should come up to the beach or something. I think that's along the lines of what it was. Yeah,
we communicated, and with quarantine, that was tough. And then I had also moved to Arizona this fall. So, I mean, and I've just been really focused on my career.
So what made you do that jump in during quarantine? Like why, all the time that had gone by, like what was it about that moment that you were like, we should like, this is the time to re-bridge the connection?
This is a tough, I guess I gotta be honest, but like, I just, it was me kind of throwing a feeler out there to see if you were, available, and I was, single, and yeah, I don't know. I added you. I was the one that reached out, and I'm the one that added you first on Instagram. So we just kind of, I threw it out there, right? I mean, obviously we had a pass and I was attracted to you. But yeah, I mean, everything, I was just completely,
So in my blog post, I say, quick note for ghosts. I don't think you're bad, and I in no way am trying to stop anyone from reaching out to people. I'm only imploring you to ask yourself 2 important questions before you do so. 1, why are you reaching back out to this person? And 2, did you do something in the past that you need to make amends for before you could possibly reconnect with this person? If the answer to number 1 is altruistic and not self-serving, then great. Move to question 2. If the answer to question 2 is yes, I did do something in the past, apologize and be okay if the person decides they don't want to reconnect with you. If the answer is no, then more power to you. But again, it's okay if they don't want to reconnect. We've kind of talked about motivations and feelings about, the reconnections. Do you still think you would have reached out to me with these questions in mind?
Those are really good ways to look at it. I think that a lot of people reach out for, some of it is for ego purposes. Men might reach out because and out of selfish reasons too. They might reach out to, see if they still have it or whatever it is. That's what a lot of guys would do. But those are great things to consider, when you're doing that, because I've been, I was in a relationship, obviously a serious one, until December of 2019. And the way we broke up, and I had never contacted her again. And there's been moments this last year where I had thought that I should reach out for that closure or just to be nice. And then I just thought about it and I'm like, no, because that will just open the doors. We don't want to relapse because we know it's not the best. And it also causes trauma for her. So I was thinking about her receiving end a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like, those kind of questions that you just brought up, those 2 points, that would have failed that test.
Yeah.
The answer is no.
That's really great that you were able to recognize that this wouldn't be self-serving, or that it kind of would, not that it would be self-serving, but it's not good for either of you. And it could judge up some demons in her past, especially if she's in a net negative.
It would have been a negative.
Yeah.
Overall negative.
But thinking back as to some of the answers you gave me today about why you reached back out to me, you said the first time it was you felt like you needed to make amends, or you felt like you owed me something but didn't. And the second time it was just because, you wanted to see if the store was still open. Thinking of those questions in terms of us, would you still reach out? Do you think that your motivations were pure and not self-serving?
Well,
or
if I would have looked back at it back in 2018, when I reached out to you, I think it was 2018, when I was single at that time, I was still lightly communicating back and forth with my ex. We wouldn't talk for a few weeks and stuff, but there was still an opportunity for someone to say something to each other. And now, knowing that if I was back in that situation now, because I have evolved just like you have evolved over the years, I would not have done it that time, because there was still because the door was not closed. So now, this time when I reached out to you this past year, it was closed, but we didn't know what was going on with quarantine. So they were a little bit different reasons. And the second time, the reasons were much more at least sincere and open to actually hanging out. The first time was partially, I felt like bad from the 2 years prior that we kind of ended it abruptly. And I felt like I was single. It was my right to reach out and like, communicate, like I'm free, that kind of thing. So that was a little bit more of an immature or a little bit more like impulse. The second time was like, well, I can actually speak with her and not feel like I have a monkey on my back because of a on and off relationship. And not only that, but the first time I reached out to you, I didn't even add you on social media. I just DM'd you out of the blue. The second time we actually added each other and now we support each other.
I think the first time was definitely a little bit more upsetting for me just because I was in a relationship and I had made that very clear on social media. But like you said, like it was like you were able to recognize the immaturity of the situation. And I think that 2020, we did open the doors back up to each other. Like we did follow each other. And I did it also, like I followed you back. I made that decision because I have had years of, therapy and had time to look back on us. And while, I don't have any ill will or anything, like I know that like I can have the open lines of communication. I can see you again and not feel tempted to go and repeat mistakes of my past. So I was in a place to welcome you back in terms of like that, potential of a friendship.
Definitely.
I am going to blog post by saying time is such an interesting thing and people can change so much in a short amount of time. Some people are only meant to be in your life for a short period of time and some are meant to last a lifetime. It doesn't make any relationship, platonic or romantic, any less important. All in the same, sometimes some relationships are meant to stay in the past where they belong. Do you agree with this idea? Do you think some people are best left in the past?
I do think that I actually am one of those people that think that timing actually means something. I also believe that there are many different people that you could make it work with in this world. Like, for example, me, there's 7 billion people in this world. And I'm sure that there's at least 50 women in the whole world, or 50 men in your case, in the whole world that would make a good relationship for you. But would you see that or not? Depends a lot on combination of both people being in the right place at the right time, understanding the value that the other person brings them. So, like I say, when you were 18, I knew you were 18 and I knew that I had just moved here. And I knew that that was something that shouldn't be taken extremely seriously at the time because you weren't fully developed as a woman either. So yeah, I do believe that the timing needs to be right. I don't believe in the cliche, if it's right, it's right. Like, I think that that's silly because you're not really looking at, you're not really realizing who you are as a person. You know what I'm saying? Like, I guess people both need to equally value each other and understand the importance of each other at that point in life. I can look at someone in my past and say that if I had met that person now, I would actually realize the value that they may have brought, or vice versa.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people who do like break up and then come back together years later, and they're totally fine. I think for me personally, like I really believe in people being able to grow together, and maybe it's just because I have changed so much, so I have a different perspective in terms of like who I was when I was 18 and who I am now are two very different people, that like it's hard for me to fully fathom some of the friendships or like revisiting some of the friendships at 18 unless, progress was made on their end too.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I definitely am like, I've had, you're not the only person to reach out to me. And there are a lot of the people who usually reach out to me, people who I'm like, not that I don't feel a connection enough to want to explore that. It's more of like, I feel like we had our time and we served our purposes in each other's lives. And I think it's more of like, I think I'm good. I guess the best way to say it. Like I'm in a place where I'm really good. There's some of the people who have reached out in the past to me. I'm just like, I don't know what hole in my life you'd be able to fill because I feel very well rounded at this moment. Do you think that we are people who were best left in the past, or like, are we, the Instagram friends? Are we
Well, I think we're
serve our
definitely,
purpose? What do you think?
I think we're Instagram friends. I think this communication is actually helping our friendship. Um, so no, I don't think that we need to like totally leave us in the past to answer your question. Um, I do like, I also like, we all judge people, not like as far as like, this is like, I'm going to judge them because of this, but like, you're able to like kind of get a feel for who they are, how they feel about certain things in life. And, through social media, that's kind of how crazy social media is these days. When people are open, you kind of know what everyone's up to, even if you haven't talked to them in 10 years. But I don't think that it's something where we should just, there's no reason to ghost unless you like my pictures and videos just to like them. I mean, I would imagine you like my content. I like your content, your
I don't even
transparency.
know.
So why would we stop talking? Like, I don't understand why we wouldn't, especially when we're on good terms.
Yeah, I would definitely say that we're like Instagram friends. I think that we can support each other in like those endeavors. I will say that I definitely think that I still hold some sorts of resentment towards you, and I think that I'm justified in those resentments. But I guess that's like on me. But I do really think that like we have evolved enough to be Instagram friends and to be okay with like, supporting each other in terms of like, we were big parts of each other's lives. And like, I'm very happy that your business is thriving. I know that was something that like you were working on when we met. And so those are the things that I'm like, I am really happy for you. In terms of like the likelihood of us like hanging out, me going to Arizona or wherever you are, I think you're in Arizona.
Yeah.
Like probably will. But like it's not to say that like we have to be ghosts in each other's lives, that we can't, support each other and do the random like DM to say hi and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, life happens, and things happen unexpectedly as well. So,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I agree with you.
The last question, is there anything you want to say as the ghost in the situation? Anything we haven't already said, or something that you want to expand on that I might have cut you off on or something?
Well, I think that your audience is mostly female, probably 83% female. Maybe not, who knows?
I have a good mix.
Okay. Really? Okay.
Yeah. I have a lot of male friends who support me.
All right. Give me a quantification. How many percent are male?
I don't know that off the top of my head right now.
I'm being kind of dry.
Good, because I don't actually look at analytics because that can get very depressing. I try to just make content for anyone. I do have male followers though. Men like what I have to say too.
So to the 32% of males that are probably in their mid-20s, don't be a dick. Just reach out if it makes perfect sense. Don't be a man and like reach out if there's a reason to. Don't do it for selfish reasons. It's also how you start a friendship or a relationship is very important to deciding if you're able to reach out again. Don't start off on a rocky starter. It's just going to be a toxic endeavor for both people, especially the receiver. So start and be honest right up front. So then if you ever go your separate ways, there's that window's open, but it's in a good light. It's okay. It's going to be well received because you didn't do anything that was extremely toxic to that person. Obviously, in this case, there were certain things that I was not aware of until you just brought them up, like literally right now, because this is a very transparent phone call. This is the first time we've had a lengthy conversation in half a decade. But don't be an asshole and don't be an asshole and just reach out if it makes perfect sense, and start every friendship relationship with honesty. So then, that window can open if it makes sense to, and you're not being a selfish jerk,
Yeah.
like
I love that.
There's a lot of guys that don't have the discipline.
I love that. Don't be a dick. That's how I feel like every one of my podcasts should just end. Just don't be a dick. Well, Ryan, thank you for doing this. You were a great sport. I really appreciate, you taking the time to talk to me, especially for something that like maybe not everyone will want to talk about. This is the end of the first Christy's Wellness podcast. I had so much fun. I hope that all my readers and listeners loved it. Ryan, I hope you enjoyed yourself. And
I did.
Good.
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Thank you so much for watching. It means so much. If you like what you saw, make sure that you like and comment and subscribe to my channel and all those things that YouTubers say. And if you have suggestions on things that I should talk about, you can leave a comment below or head over to my website, christyiswellness.com, and write it in the contact me section. Until next time, thank you.